December 15th, 2022 will forever be the day conspiracy theorists, feminists, and technological fundamentalists raise their middle fingers in solidarity. For today, your humble narrator leaks the biggest news to break from space since Neil Armstrong blew his opening line in the inaugural moonwalk. That's why you come, folks. You hear it here and you hear it first. A pregnancy has been reported on the International Space Station. If anyone doesn't understand the implications, let me spell them out for you. There hasn't been a shuttle launch in over 3 months, at which time every space-bound astronaut was subjected to a thorough physical examination. There is no way a pregnant woman would get cleared for launch, which means she conceived in space. Now, all women are required to take a contraceptive pill while working aboard the ISS. It dampens the effects of the menstrual cycle. And physical intercourse is strictly outlawed. So, unless something utterly bizarre is going on, the simplest conclusion is that one or more of the crew has gone rogue. Beyond that, I can't tell you anything, but I guarantee you will hear a lot of rumors in the coming days, a lot of angles. What I urge you to remember is, information and sexuality follow their own rules. You cannot keep either in a box. American corporate media has disavowed any knowledge of a pregnancy in space. Equally silent on the topic are the news feeds of the ESA and the Russian propagandists. One would almost think they didn't want us to know the identity of the woman in question. One would almost think they didn't want us to know it happened at all. Why keep it a secret? So they had sex in space. Big deal. Hardly worth a cover-up unless something bigger is happening under the surface. Remember, not one but 2 crew members are guilty of breaking the coital moratorium. Who they are and where they're from may have a fair amount to do with it. Political reasons for privacy, in other words. Everything I fought against. I can tell you one thing, though. Regardless of the details, it's going to be a mess to sort this out. Breaking news! This morning, incumbent POTUS phallic symbol in a special announcement on national television proudly declared the first baby ever conceived in space to be American. For those of you who've done your research, you'll know this means the pregnant woman is either gay or married to someone on Earth. In all likelihood, she is Liz Ferris, the space station's doe-eyed flight engineer. Selected in the 2017 draft for her photographic memory and flawless test scores, Ferris has the confidence of an alpha lion and the charisma to match. She rose to engineer through unflagging loyalty to her mission, a high endurance to comfort deprivation, and most importantly, no family ties on Earth. In somewhat related news, ex-playgirl-turned-rapper-turned-women's rights activist Felonious Phil, aka Philip Davis, released a statement of solidarity with the as-yet officially unnamed mother today. In his words, "If I were a woman, I would get pregnant as a matter of principle." More breaking news. Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin's side has claimed the father of the first baby conceived in space to be Russian. For those of you doing your research on the fly, the father is either Commander Mikhail Mikhailkov or the Systems Technician Specialist, which is to say the janitor, Enver Olenov. Look, I don't want to say I told you so. Neither party's identity has been confirmed, and already people are arguing about rape and abortion and the definition of homosexuality. We have a lot to learn before this is resolved, folks. The best thing you can do is go about your life. Nothing good comes from your erotic scribbling at Novemberist. Nobody benefits from your theories at Tom in Texas. Please keep your uninformed opinions to yourself. In the meantime, can I suggest you put your remarkable imagination towards solving the real problem here? Can a baby survive re-entry, or does the mother need to be returned to Earth immediately? And if so, is it safe for an American to land outside of the United States? I guess the name was inevitable. I would have coined it myself had I realized how much opposition there would be to its coming home. Dirty opposition, like turning it into a campaign issue, like withholding facts until it was advantageous to share them. In a statement released earlier today, NASA admitted that International Space Station's engineer, Liz Ferris, had become pregnant during her tenure aboard the craft. No mention was made of the circumstances, nor of the father. The event is under investigation and should be considered a minor anomaly. Exactly 2 minutes later, PM Putinside's propaganda bureau released a statement concerning the ISS's janitor, Enver Olanov. He had been involved in an accident and was on paid leave until further notice. What happened next was a social media blitzkrieg. Hashtags were born and died with the feral cruelty of siblicide, victims of temporal information vacuums. The most extreme Christian side as a second coming, of course, but inside's release lost in the shining halo of their redemption. Less extreme extremists thought Ferris and Olanov should stay in the ISS and raise their child as a science experiment. Someone suggested the name Laika. This is where it got interesting. Laika, of course, was the dog sent into space back in 1957, the first animal to orbit the Earth, supposedly. Exactly when she died and exactly what that proved has been obscured by time and, of course, the withholding of information. Anyway, it didn't seem anyone objected to the name because Laika was sent off to die in space so much as they objected to the fact that the Russians got her there first. A sudden patriotic fervor swept the interwebs. Spacebaby emerged from the chaos as the hashtag of choice, a rallying cry for every nutjob with a soapbox, including the indigestible slew of wannabe presidential candidates and, well, myself. And it didn't stop at the border. Allied nations raised the stars and stripes in a show of unity while Russian sympathizers quietly planted 3D printed busts of Enver Olanov in public squares around the world. Someone traced Ferris's heritage back to Robert Kennedy. Someone else dredged up a childhood connection between Olanov and the grandson of Joseph Stalin's butler. In a rare moment of insight, President Symbol was quoted as saying that, with enough history behind us, everybody was bound to be related somehow. Putinsider responded with a blistering riposte about Phallic's disabled brother Limbo. A few of my less impressed readers have suggested I would thrive in such an environment, but I don't like to get involved in pissing contests. Sooner or later, everyone gets it on their foot. No, for once I agreed with felonious Phil. Shut up and listen to what your mother has to say. Actually, and this is not an endorsement, Philip Davis is one of the saner voices to be heard among the chaos. Nobody else, not Phallic Symbol, not PM Putinsider, and not a single middle management politician, thought to ask Liz Ferris what she wanted. Olanov spoke with the Russian press today. He claimed Liz Ferris took advantage of his delicate emotional state, then cruelly left him when she'd gotten what she wanted. He claims he was used by a scheming bitch of a dyke who knew exactly what she was doing. Now I want to say I told you so, but this I did not see coming. Enver Olanov is a slight man, though his classmates at the academy remember him as an imposing figure, a leader among leaders. That changed when he graduated third and was given the janitorial position as a consolation, for the shuttle program only required 2 pilots from his class. Apparently someone figured it wouldn't hurt for the ISS's crew to be cross-trained. Suddenly, the American consciousness wavered. This was a human interest story they could relate to. Man aims for the stars, can only reach them by cleaning toilets. Gattaca meets basically every story from the Great Depression, with just enough sex thrown in to keep the audience awake. And besides, didn't this mean the economy was just as bad over there? Etymology is a funny thing. You can say a phrase hundreds of times over the course of your life, then on one occasion, for no reason at all, it strikes you as odd and you just have to look it up. At least it happens to me. Ever since Olanov's interview went public, I've been waiting for the other shoe to drop. But I didn't know where the saying came from. During the manufacturing boom around the beginning of the 20th century, tenement apartments in big cities were built in a modular fashion, with kitchens and bedrooms directly above each other. Thus it was common to hear one's neighbor taking off their shoes and dropping them on the floor, the first sound creating an expectation for a second. As architecture evolved and building materials improved, the cliché outlived its application, but, like religion, the tradition lingered. And so, waiting for the other shoe to drop has come to signify the anticipation of an expected event. Liz Ferris has to speak, doesn't she? Philip Davis certainly thinks so. And now suddenly the rest of the Western Hemisphere thinks so too. It doesn't matter what they believe or whose side they're on. The show must go on. Don't stop the carnival. The only person who might think otherwise is Phallic Symbol, but not even the POTUS can deny the will of the people. Ferris has been offered a spot on The Daily Show, The Nightly Show, and The Midsummer's Afternoon Show. She's been offered a spot on The New American Idol and The New Oprah Winfrey Show. She was even offered a spot as a jury member on the newest OJ drama. There has been no acknowledgement from the ISS. In the absence of an interview with the expecting mother, Philip Davis seized the spotlight, milking the opportunity for every minute it would extend his flagging career, repeatedly insisting he wasn't in it for his career but for the sake of women everywhere. I, for one, am grudgingly inclined to believe him. In yet another rare moment, this of journalistic integrity, today broadcast television aired a solemn interview with Richard Boner, Washington's Minister of Science, on the adverse effects of zero gravity on developing fetuses. Sex in space seems a lot less sexy than it did 2 hours ago. Never has it been more clear to me than in this moment. Our evolution owes as much of its success to gravity as it does to the delicate play of air and water across the planet's surface. After the smoke clears from the Spacebaby event, I predict the longest-lasting effect will be for this truth to imprint itself on the human psyche. We are supposed to live here, not out there. This might be a good thing. In any case, it doesn't matter where she touches down. Liz Ferris needs to come home now, or the question is academic. Her baby's internal organs won't develop properly without the pull of gravity. Not only will it never be able to return to Earth, it won't turn into a viable human at all. So much for the second coming. And just when you think it can't get any weirder, the weird come knocking. In an exceptionally well-documented analysis, Chinese experts displayed irrefutable evidence proving Ferris and Ulanov conceived while the ISS was above the People's Republic. The PM's subsequent conclusions, while tenuous, are backed by an impressive ground-to-space arsenal, enough to make Phallic willing to listen, even though he sold them half their stash. What it boils down to is, there's no way to get Ferris home safely without declaring all-out war on China, and possibly Russia, and even then nothing's guaranteed. And for what? A rule and a heartbreaker and probably a sociopath? How else did she fool the psychologists? It's a mad, mad world. Phallic symbol withdrew from the election, claiming overexertion. Neither party has a viable candidate ready. One didn't intend to mount more than a token challenge until 2028, and the other, well, symbol was their candidate. The power vacuum is ripe for the picking. Mixed metaphors. Into the void steps Philip Davis, ripe from his own cherry-picking. His lack of political experience means nothing, for it's become a single-issue election. Whatever actually happens to Liz and Spacebaby, Felonious Phil's compassionate response has captivated the heart of the nation. He is now the front-runner for the Oval Office, with one small complication. Actually, two. He is a felon, after all, but that means less than it did before the marijuana clemency precedents. Now all it takes is a good enough lawyer or, ultimately, a good enough story to convince 5 Supreme Court justices, which means it's a popularity contest, which means the only complication is his own. Philip Davis refuses to take office as a man, because doing so would conflict with his personal political philosophy. Meanwhile, in space, the ISS was ominously silent for 2 hours last night. NASA reported all systems nominal, which was a roundabout way of saying they didn't have a bloody clue why nobody would answer their hails. They could access the station's network of video cameras, of course, but the cupola's feed seemed to be malfunctioning, and the other section's cameras remained free of human activity. Clearly a meeting of some sort was taking place. This broke all sorts of regulations, but there was little anyone on the ground could do beyond invoking protocols for situations far worse than a tampered camera. So the world waited, and eventually the cupola disgorged its passengers, a muted train of cosmonauts bent on resuming their duties, except Ferris and Ulanov. The 2 crew members floated, slowly and deliberately, to the central communications station. They sat side by side, donned headsets, and stared into the camera. Ferris nudged Ulanov. He flinched, nearly imperceptibly, and placed his hand on top of hers. He cleared his throat. "We have just been married," he announced. Ferris gripped his hand tightly and lifted it into the air. She was smiling. "They made me say the things I did," Ulanov continued. "They put the words inside my mouth." "We're in love," Ferris broke in. "We're going to have a family." She rubbed her belly, which hadn't shown any signs of growing. The couple radiated happiness. They glowed with so much bliss that it spread through the video screen and infected the watchers back on Earth. An aura of love wrapped around the planet like the greatest aurora borealis ever seen, an emotional magnetosphere that charged every being with positivity. Nikola Tesla sat up in his grave. Phallic Symbol laid down his book of missile codes and took up a paintbrush. Prime Minister Put-Inside, it turned out, had always wanted to be a lumberjack. Felicia Davis, traveled to the White House by special request of the Vice President, who immediately violated the Constitution by appointing her interim president and resigning for a career in pornography. Nobody seemed to mind. They were all too busy living out their heart's desires, because why not? There's no problem, neither alien nor domestic, that can't be solved with a wedding and a baby. As for me, this is the last column I'll ever write. As soon as it's done, I'm leaving for the Black Rock Desert. If everything goes as planned, I'll be in time for the arrival of Spacebaby herself. Me and several million other pilgrims. That is a party I would not miss. My heart's desire? If you've been reading this column for a while, you probably already know. I just want us to play fairly, man. Do business out in the open. Work together to make this planet a better place. But maybe sitting around writing conspiracy theory blogs isn't the best way to go about creating that world.